All right, hello, and welcome back to Under a Rock with Brielle and Guerlain. Hey,
Hello, hello.
um, to wait, I'm sorry.
He was so excited
I
to do
was
the intro
so
today,
excited,
and you
man.
already messed it up.
My one shot. So this is episode 4 of the podcast. Today on this episode we are talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, episodes 10, 11, and 12
Mhm.
of book 1.
Yep.
All right, so Jet.
Yeah.
I know.
Episode 10, Jet.
I know you got a lot to say about this one.
Let's talk about Mouthweed Boy. Let's do it.
Let's do
Mouthweed
it.
Boy. Okay. um First off, I want to just say I love Momo. Momo's great.
He's the best. The best character, hands down.
Okay, so the episode starts and Aang and Sokka and Katara are walking through this forest and Momo gets caught in a trap. And Aang is like, oh, I gotta save Momo. And Sokka whips out his boomerang and cuts all the animals down, which A+ boomerang use, Sokka. That is really good.
Yes.
And then, there's this whole argument that Sokka and Katara have about who the leader of the group should be, if it should be Sokka or it should be Aang. And I personally find it really funny that Katara's like, oh, you haven't even kissed a girl yet. And he's like, I have. Oh, is it Gran? I've met Gran. But I think it's funny because Sokka's first kiss was Yue, a princess and the spirit of the moon. And Katara's first kiss was Jet. Katara, you
Ooh.
can't
Say none. You can't even talk. Can't talk, Katara.
And also it's really funny to me because Sokka could have lied and said oh, Suki kissed me. He could have done that to make me seem more masculine and
Right.
manly, but he doesn't. He doesn't even think to lie.
I thought he was gonna say Suki.
That's what I thought too, but he's just you haven't met her and, and everything. And it's just funny to me. I think the way that the writers capture the way that, preteens and kids talk is A+, because it really does sound, when all the kids talk to each other, it really does sound like actual conversations that kids would have.
Right.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
And then they wander because of Sokka's instincts.
Sokka's instincts.
Into a Fire Nation camp, which is very scary.
Hooray for Sokka instincts, man.
Yeah.
Just A1. Instead of flying, let's just walk right into a Fire Nation camp.
Exactly.
Let's just do it.
I mean, in all honesty, his instincts aren't terrible.
No.
It does make sense that maybe they should avoid flying sometimes because Appa is so noticeable. He has the right idea. It was just bad timing. It was just really bad timing.
It was a little weird that Katara and Aang were arguing the fact that Appa isn't noticeable. How is he not?
Yeah.
Sokka had a legitimate point. Appa is this 10-ton flying, but how many flying bisons are in the world right now?
Exactly, yeah.
He's very noticeable.
Not only is it super noticeable just because Appa's a big thing in the sky, but also he has the markings of the air nomads.
Right.
So he's gonna be a target. It's just bad timing.
There's only one airbender in the world, right? And isn't that airbender the Avatar? Is that
yeah,
come on.
exactly. So they're about to get beaten by some Fire Nation, and Jet and his band of kids show up and take out those Fire Nation soldiers. Honestly, it's pretty impressive. It really is impressive that there's 15 kids and they managed to take out pretty much a whole
There's
army.
a lot of them.
Yeah, there's at least
troops.
30 plus people, and they're all adults with firebending power and everything, and it's impressive. You gotta admit that it's impressive.
Gotta give credit where it's due.
Yeah. I'm watching it and I'm like, oh yeah, that is pretty cool. You kind of forget as you go through this series and you think back, you're like, oh, Jet's kind of a loser. He's a jerk because of what you find out later in the episode.
Right.
But when we first meet him, he's really cool, and he's, older and he's living in the woods and he's the leader of a group and he's taken out the Fire Nation. He's really cool. And the show does so much to make you think that right away and believe that Katara does, which again is good writing because then when the flip happens, it's even more heartbreaking and it's even more, anger inducing for both Katara and for the audience. Yeah.
very much. And Jet is very smooth.
He is.
How when he counters the Fire Nation soldier, counters it and then kicks him in the back of his head.
Mhm.
He stumbles, but like the way he stumbles is like the way they animated. He stumbles and like goes right back up to Katara. Like,
Yeah.
hey, that was smooth.
That was smooth.
A little. Saying "hey" right now reminded me of Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
I don't have was Marlisha Ali. I can't pronounce his first name. Mahershala. I don't have his smooth, silky, rich tone voice, but you get.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was really smooth, and then Katara being hi.
Yeah. It's at this
Hey.
point when I was watching the show that I was like, huh, I'm a lot like Katara.
Yes.
And that isn't a bad thing. I just want to clarify that. It's not a bad
It's
thing.
not a bad thing.
But like watching Katara throughout these episodes, I'm like, oh man, I'm really like Katara. Like if I ever took one of those, like what Avatar character you most like, it would be Katara. Especially when I was young, like younger, because I'm 27 now. But when I was 14, I was 100% like Katara. Like if some guy like Jet stumbled up to me after like fighting to protect me, I'd be like, hi, take me up to your treehouse. Let's do it. Like I get it. I really do.
Whoa, let's do it. Come, Brielle.
That's
slow
not what I
down.
meant.
I
Stop
know.
it. We're trying to keep this clean.
Oh, well, please. Anyways.
Yeah, but I get it. I really, really do. You know, he's really, like you said, he's really smooth.
Very smooth.
I also really like in this episode and the episodes following, we kind of see Aang's ability to just connect with people so instantaneously and so joyously. Like it's so wholesome and funny when he is introduced to the Duke and Pipsqueak, and he assumes that Pipsqueak is the little one, but it's actually the big one.
Right.
And the big one is like, well, what's like, is my name funny? And he's like, yeah, it's hilarious. And they all start laughing. You know, I think Aang's ability to just find a common ground with people and just be so light and so airy and so, you know, kind really helps him connect to people. Because this whole episode, he's kind of just flitting around, flying around. He's not really doing much, but he's connecting and having a good time with all the kids, which I think is sweet. You know, this episode isn't so much about Aang, but he's always there in the background making connections that will come into play later.
Honestly, yeah.
You know? I mean, it's a very obvious comparison, and I'm not the first person to make this comparison, I know for a fact, but Jet's whole band of kids is very much like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, which I think obviously was done on purpose. I mean, there's so many allusions to it, like living up in the trees and the bird calls and the fact that they have no moral compass. All of these kids are just bloodthirsty. But it's just interesting, you know, to see all the different things that the showrunners took to make this show, you know?
It's funny. You say Peter Pan, I was thinking more of Codename Kids Next Door. Which
they came out around
the same time.
Yeah.
So not like one would be inspired by the other. But you could argue saying that Peter Pan and the Lost Boys inspired Codename Kids Next Door.
Yeah, I mean, anything kind of involving children forming their own group and like taking care of business and like fighting and stuff, I think is, especially if they're mostly boys, because there were girls in Jet's group, but like they were mostly boys, has to be inspired by Peter Pan. Heck, or even inspired by Lord of the Flies, which is another thing entirely. I don't know if this was inspired by Lord of the Flies, but you know. But yeah, it's definitely, you can see the illusions, and what I think is so clever, and maybe this is just me kind of putting my like English degree to good use, but when you first read Peter Pan and you meet the Lost Boys, it seems idyllic. It seems like, oh, these kids just play all day and they have fun and they fight pirates and everything's great and wonderful. And then you slowly peel back the layers, and Wendy and the reader realize that these kids are like monsters. Like they don't have any sense of consequence. They don't have any moral compass. They don't understand that their actions cause pain. You know, they try to hurt Wendy and hurt her brothers. They actively hurt the pirates, you know, and they don't realize because they grew up without parents to teach them those things. And Peter encourages that behavior. And the same thing goes with Jet and his group. Like on the surface, it's like, oh, how fun. All these kids just live in trees and they fight the Fire Nation. How great. And then you peel it back and you realize what they're doing is actively hurting innocent people in some weird quest for justice and revenge, which I think is kind of brilliant, you know?
Yeah. You would do great on tell me that you've passed with flying colors on your English regents.
I mean, I don't remember what I got on my English regents, but I got a 4 on my AP Lit. So I mean,
believe it, because the way you compared the two works was
thank you.
That was chef's kiss.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm a creative writing minor, or was at least. Yeah, no, I got a 4 on my AP Lit.
That's good.
Yeah, but this is a very interesting episode.
Now we go up to the trees, and then we have this little romantic moment between. Cause it's just hilarious how they changed the art, not
The
necessarily
art style. Yeah.
It's like is that cliche romantic filter where it's like all beige, and then you hear I don't know exactly what that sound is, but it's like it's like kind of paper flipping or something like that.
Yeah.
You hear that, they go up in the trees,
And everything has a
swirling.
soft filter.
Everything has a soft filter, like bro. And then Katara's looking up at Jet like, wow. Oh my god,
I get it, Katara. I get it. Yeah, I imagine for a boy, it probably is a little like, eh.
Yeah. I don't need it. What really stood out to me in this episode was the fact that Aang wasn't jealous at all, like in the
No,
slightest.
he really wasn't.
So it's like I guess his feelings weren't fully developed for Katara yet at this point.
Probably, yeah.
But who was jealous was Sokka.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, that instead of like doing the cliche of, oh, this love interest and that love interest, like he's jealous of that guy because that guy is stealing essentially his crush.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, no, it's more of a sibling thing. It's like, you're just jealous of Jet because he's a better leader and everything.
Yeah.
And she picks Jet over her own brother.
Yeah.
Own flesh.
At first, yeah, she does.
So is that what it's like being a 14-year-old girl?
I mean, I personally wouldn't know because I don't have a brother, but you know, I don't think I mean, not to like knock Katara, I don't think I would ever do that. I don't think I would ever choose my like crush over my sister, but it's also slightly a different situation. Like, you know, everything that Katara had seen had pointed to Jet being like this great and fearless leader, and Sokka was just kind of being a whiny teenager. So I kind of understand why she would be like, I like Jet better than you right now. I mean, I at the end, she does pick Sokka and she does stand by him.
Yeah, after she
which I
found
think
out he was a maniac.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, like I said, this situation has never happened to me. I've never been involved in this kind of situation, so I can't really speak to that. I will say that I just love Sokka in this episode. He's such a good boy. Such a good boy.
This is a really good Sokka episode.
Yeah, because we really see like his capabilities as a leader. We see his natural instincts. We see his, you know, own kind of morality and his own, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? We see his creativity. We see his bravery. We see his quick thinking. Like this episode really, I think, kind of sets up the scene for Sokka to become the leader that we know he's going to be.
Very much so.
I will say though, going back to like Katara picking Jet over her brother, this episode is a prime example of Katara's ability and inclination to always see the good in people coming to bite her in the butt. Like, this is not the first time that it happens where she gives someone the benefit of the doubt and they hurt her. You know, but I think this episode is a prime example of, you know, how one of Katara's strengths, which is her open heart and her optimism, kind of being a negative, which I think is so brilliant. Like, it's a mark of good character development when your strength can also be a weakness, you know? And what a great character trait for her to have, that she's so kind and so willing to help people that she sometimes sees good where there isn't. And I think that's really brilliant, and a good character trait for her to have.
Very.
Yeah.
And we even see what happens when she sees that not everyone has good.
Mm-hmm.
When she comes to the realization that like Jet is crazy and he's willing to kill innocents just to get rid of the Fire Nation. When she first attacks Jet with the water, the first attack, when she pulls the water back in, you can see like shock on her face.
Yeah.
Like as if she didn't want to do that.
No,
Like
not.
it was just pure emotion, a pure reaction of just like, oh my God, I believed in you. She even says it like, I trusted you and you're crazy and I trusted you. I trusted you and you're crazy. Like how could you like betray my trust like that? And then after Jet kind of I guess subdues Aang, that's when she goes full ham.
Oh yeah.
We see the seeds of her becoming a water master. Like she did so nice and effortlessly how like boom 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 and then the frost.
Yeah, which is
like,
so cool.
We seen her really develop her waterbending.
Yeah. And I think it's also really cool because water is so connected to, I believe, their emotions, that it makes sense that when she's very agitated or emotional that her waterbending would be stronger, This episode is also really cool because it shows that not every Fire Nation person is bad and not every non-Fire Nation person is good, which I think is so important for this show to kind of make everything gray. Like this show, which I think is so wonderful, is not very black and white. It's very gray. And this is one of those episodes that helps make everything gray because, we have Jet and his band of kids who are actually not good. I guess technically they are good because they're just following what Jet says, and I don't think most of them would want to kill innocent people, but they still do. They still hurt people, and they're not Fire Nation, which I think is so important as kind of a lesson to teach children who are watching this show that there are good and bad people everywhere, and you can't just paint a bold stroke and say X is bad, Y is good,
And Jet tries to use that to manipulate Katara and Aang when Sokka when Sokka came to them with this information of Jet tried to like beat up this old man.
Yeah.
And Jet was all like, wow, so you told him I beat up an old man, but you failed to mention that he was Fire Nation? And even Sokka's just like, all right, so what? He was Fire Nation. He was an innocent civilian. Like it really does paint that gray picture on.
And I think this episode also kind of shows the two ways of viewing and understanding war. Because Jet's way of viewing war, like guerrilla warfare and take no prisoners and stuff, is how some countries wage war.
Right.
They do a complete like destruction, like the Fire Nation. They just take no prisoners, they just go crazy, and they just destroy. And Sokka seems to have a more nuanced view of war, which I think is better. I mean, obviously war is bad no matter what, but he seems to have a more nuanced, tactical view of war in we need to achieve this goal, but we don't want to hurt people we don't have to, which I think shows his maturity over Jet's,
Yeah.
And it's just Jet is a very sad figure, I think, when you really stop to think about it. I mean, this poor guy, he lost his parents when he was a little kid. He's kind of been forced to live in the forest. Like, he had no other relatives to help take care of him. And I guess there were no other people in his village or town that were able to take care of him. Maybe it was a kind of destruction of the whole thing. And, he grew up in the forest with all these other kids with nothing but anger and resentment and fear bubbling up and building inside of him. And so it's not too far of a stretch to think he'd be so willing to destroy the people who hurt him that he forgets about other people. He forgets about innocent civilians in his quest for revenge, in his quest for justice, in his quest for glory. Yeah. And it's sad. It's sad that, like, he's come to this because he could have been so intensely like powerful and smart. He could have been a real asset to some kind of Earth Kingdom army, or heck, even to the gang. He could have joined them and been really helpful and tactical, but he let his quest for justice in his own warped view override everything else.
Yeah.
So it's sad. And the fact that, we see him later and nothing's changed is really sad, And the thing that I love about Jet and this show in general is even with their bad characters, there's no characters that I hate. Because I have watched so much TV in my lifetime, and there are plenty of shows that I'm watching where a character is on screen and I'm like, ew, I hate that character. I hate every time there's a storyline with that character. I wish this character would just go away. I hate that they're in the show. But with Avatar, there's really no character that I feel that way about. I mean, sure, I don't like the bad guys, like Ozai or Zhao or anything, but like, there's no character that I was feeling that way about. Like, later on when we see Jet again, I wasn't like, oh God, Jet again? Like, ew, why can't he just go away? I was like, oh, Jet's here. Like, this is going to be interesting. Like, every character serves a purpose, and every character is interesting and compelling. And even if I don't necessarily like the character, I don't hate them and wish that they were gone, which I think is such a good thing. The fact that there's no character that I actively am like, oh, get this guy off my screen,
Right.
Because there are a lot of shows that I have that feeling with where I'm like, oh,
It just speaks to the writing, like like you said before, like each character, each pivotal character adds something, like they bring something to the table that adds something to the story for a way for it to develop. I guess with other TV shows, it's like, okay, this character is here so you could hate them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that. That's just it. There's nothing else to it. But Jet is Jet is not the best person. However, whenever he's in the picture, you know that something is gonna come out of it.
Yeah,
like something worthwhile, something that will like advance the plot. It's not just like, oh, here's someone that everyone could hate on, everyone could shit on. Like, no.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, yeah, he's not a good person, but watch how he takes the story further.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, Jet and his group try to blow up the dam to stop the Fire Nation army, and Sokka, with some quick thinking, manages to get everyone out of the Earth Kingdom town and save them.
I like how it instead of showing animation of Sokka going to the town and warning everyone, it's a sketch.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool. I really love these episodes and their creativity with the art style.
Yeah.
And I also like this episode because it kind of juxtaposes the episode with Haru, where instead of the old man hurting them, he helps them, because the reason that the town believes Sokka is because the old man vouches for him. Whereas in the episode with Haru, the old man ends up, bringing their doom. And so I just thought that was an interesting juxtaposition.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in this episode, Katara never, ever distrusts her brother again. She's always by his side.
You would think that that's what would happen.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this episode definitely teaches Katara that her brother is actually, capable. So,
right.
But yeah, no, they still have their sibling issues, which,
You got any more notes on this episode?
No, that's about it for Jet, So I really like this episode, and as we go through the series and we meet Jet again, I'm sure I'll have more to talk about. Yeah.
Definitely got a lot to say.
All right.
So now, the storm.
No. We have to talk about episode 11. We have to talk about episode 11.
Let's skip it. Let's just go right over it.
Let's just go right over it. No, we do have to talk about the Great Divide. We do have to talk about it because it is important. I think you can tell the quality of a show by the quality of its filler episodes.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, this is not the only filler episode. Say what you want, but Ember Island Players is a filler episode.
But it's a good one.
But I'm just saying, if the Great Divide is the Avatar: The Last Airbender's filler episode, this is a good show because this is a good filler episode. It's interesting, it's compelling, it's funny, and while it doesn't necessarily further the plot, it does tell us things about the characters.
Okay.
You know, it's not just dead space, you know? And I don't know why this episode gets such a bad rap. Like, I really, really don't.
I mean,
it's not like the best episode in the whole show, but it's definitely like not terrible. Like, I watched it and I didn't hate that I spent a half hour on it. Like, you know, like, but yeah, I think that this episode gets kind of a bad rap. And, you know, I think most of it is, you know, teasing. I don't think it's actually like hatred. But I think that if this is their filler episode, what does that say about the whole show? I mean, honestly, it really speaks to the quality of the show if this is what their filler episode is. I love this episode because it starts with like everyone fighting, even Appa and Momo, and Aang is just like, ta-da, I helped you guys. And it's so cute. I love that Appa and Momo like play and get along and have these little tiffs and stuff.
It's the funniest thing when Appa's holding down, I'm assuming it was a watermelon.
Yeah, like some kind of melon.
Some type of melon. And Momo gives up, right? Walks away, Appa gets ready. The way Momo just snatches it off of Appa's tongue and starts running, hilarious. I love Momo.
Yeah.
Best character.
Momo shows no fear.
No fear. And then Momo complains that Aang gave Appa the bigger half.
Yeah.
Like, come on, Momo. Appa has 5 stomachs.
Yeah.
You'll survive. Hilarious.
But yeah, this episode I think is really good because the dialogue is just so great. Like between Sokka and Katara, like that's how siblings fight. I just love it. I think the dialogue is really, really good. And I wonder, I mean, I don't know, but I wonder how much of it is like writing and how much of it is the voice actors like bouncing off each other, because I understand that with voice acting you're not always talking to the person in the room, that sometimes you're just in a room by yourself and you're just hearing it in your ear. But I just wonder how much of it was like, you know, Mae Whitman or Jack DeSena being like, hey, wait, can I actually call Katara this? Oh, wait, can I actually say this to Sokka? Like I said this to my brother last week or whatever. Like it feels very real and genuine. It feels like these are kids who grew up together and had their spats. Like, you know, just good dialogue. Yeah, so they have to cross this great divide. It's a canyon. And when they get there are these 2 groups of people, of refugees who need to cross as well to avoid the Fire Nation. One of them is the Zhang and one of them is the Ganjin, and they're both very, very different, almost stereotypically opposed.
Right. One is all
a little on the nose, but
a little too on the nose.
Well, it's the kid show.
You got one that's too snobby and one that's just like slobs and
yeah, they're like almost
barbaric.
Like barbaric. Yeah. So these 2 groups have to cross as well, and they are instantly fighting and they're instantly opposed to each other, and they don't even want to be in the same like group. They hate each other so much. And Aang, being the kind and good boy that he is, suggests that Appa carry all the elderly and the sick over the canyon, and everyone else kind of walks. Which, considering how much Aang hated walking when they were walking through the forest in the previous episode, I'm like, also something that I don't understand about this episode is why can't Appa just make
2 trips?
Yeah, 2 trips. Like, does it take Appa the same amount of time to get over the canyon as it does for them to walk? I don't think so. Because Appa's already there when they get there at the end. So I feel like Appa did it a lot faster.
That's a good question. I mean, I have a lot of Appa questions.
Yeah.
Like, this is going back a little bit, but with the Kyoshi warriors, where was Appa when they got ambushed?
Oh yeah.
And then on the Jet episode, where was Appa when? I mean, I know like they set the bushes on fire, so I guess Appa couldn't whatever, but he could have flew over.
Yeah.
And like smacked them with his tail.
Yeah. Right.
Where's Appa in all these moments? But
he's sleeping. I don't know. He's like, you guys have fun. I'm gonna sleep for a while. That is a good question. It might just honestly be like the animators forgot, or they were like, we can't have Appa in the scene, so we're just not gonna draw it.
Plot convenience, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Whatever.
Anyway, this episode seems like very much that it's peak adults are useless. Like there are a couple episodes in this show that are very much adults are useless, but this episode is peak adults are useless and the only one who can solve problems are kids.
Right.
The other thing I wrote down for this episode is, why are all the scary things giant? Like, there are tons of animals in this show, and a lot of them are cute. Some of them are scary. Why are all the scary ones giant? The unagi is giant. These bugs are giant. Like, why are they oversized? Why are they so big?
Well, it is a kids show, so they have to show that this is a threat.
Yeah.
I don't think a little tiny bunny will be shown much as a threat.
Yeah. I just wonder about the evolution I just wonder about the evolution of the canyon crawlers. Like, how did they get so big?
Yeah, that is a good question. Like, what are they, like giant tarantulas / they're tarantulas mixed with something?
Yeah, they're tarantulas mixed with, like, not termites, but like tarantulas mixed with, like, maybe cockroaches or something.
Maybe.
Or I don't know, but they're definitely like that kind of thing mixed with like a spider or something. Yeah. Also, so this is a little bit sad. So I watched the show with my mom, and she was watching this episode with me, and she goes, "Oh, I know that voice." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Oh, the guy who's in charge of the Ganjin, the like snooty people, that's Rene Auberjohn." And I was like, "Oh, let me look." And I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh, you're right." So everyone, my mom just wants everyone to know that she knew who the voice was. It's Rene Auberjohn from Star Trek. He's from Star Trek.
It did sound familiar to me too. I mean,
yeah, he's
I never
also
watched
like
Star Trek.
he's also like a voice actor. Like, he's done tons of other things. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, props for your mom.
Yeah, props for my mom.
Catching that.
She also recognized the voice of one of the other people in the Ganjin, who was voiced by the guy who voices Robin on Teen Titans. She's like, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, you probably don't know his name, but like, he's been in a bunch of shows that I've watched with you, and he's actually, I think, been in this this show Avatar before. Like, they just use his voice a lot."
Yeah.
So this episode was very good for my mom. She recognized a lot of voices.
That's sweet.
Yeah. She just says she wants credit for that.
Hi, Brielle's mom.
Yeah, right. This episode, I will say, I think is so cool because of the animation styles. Like, when the two tribes are talking about the history of what happened in the past and why they hate each other,
Right.
how it has those different art styles and how the art styles reflect the cultures of the two groups. Like, when the Ganjin explain everything, everything's very like fluid and artistic and beautiful. And when the Zhang explain everything, it's very blocky and cartoonesque. And I just think that's so clever and also really cool. Like, these past few episodes have been really interesting for the art and animation.
Yeah.
You know, it's really fun to watch them kind of flex and like show off their skills and their talent. And then, so they end up having to fight off the canyon critters and working together. And the two groups realize that maybe they're better off being friends and working together. Nah, they still hate each other.
They're fighting.
They still hate each other. And like, they hate each other until they get to the end of the episode. And Aang realizes that the people that they're talking about were actually friends of his. And they were just kids, and they were playing a game, and it's not so serious, and it was nothing big. And the tribes realized that they could become friends. And then Aang reveals that he was lying.
It was a big old lie. When Katara was all like, "Oh, that is so wrong," right? Her tone and like her facial expression, being that we just came off the Bad Boy episode
Yeah.
with Jet, I was like, "Oh, is Katara seeing a little bad boy in
Yeah.
Aang now?" I was like, "Oh, that is so wrong."
Yeah.
Arr, tired.
Yeah, I think definitely that's kind of what they were going for. But this episode, I think, just shows how intelligent and clever Aang is. Like, how sneaky is that? Like, he realized that nothing that he said would get these groups to stop fighting. He could say, "It happened over 100 years ago, let it go." Or, "You guys are refugees, you have to stick together. You guys fought these canyon critters and you worked together and it was great." He literally was like, "Nope, I gotta lie." And he did, and he pulled it off. And it worked. Like, oh man.
Very much on the fly too.
Yeah.
Like, and knowing that it's a lie after rewatching it, you could kind of tell like when he's coming up with things. It was like, well, actually, they were brothers, twins, in fact.
Yeah.
And they weren't adults. They were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you could kind of like hear it.
And it was
really
a
funny.
like holy redemption ball. And he's like, No, that was the name of the game. When you got to the goalpost, you shouted redemption, which doesn't make sense,
No,
but
it
okay.
doesn't. They ran with it, and you could kind of see they were kind of doubting his story at 1st, and then like he saves it by saying, "Hey, don't get me wrong, Jin Wei was snotty, and
Wei Jin.
when Jin was a slob, but this it's like he saves it, and then there's like, oh, maybe we've been fighting for no reason."
Yeah. And I just think that this episode, why we should kind of stop kind of hating on it, is because it shows Aang's, character. It shows that at the end of the day, he will always value peace over anything else. And that, like he says multiple times in this episode, harsh words won't solve anything. You need action, but action can be peaceful. Action can be helpful. Aang's job as the Avatar is to connect people together and to stop fighting and to keep peace in the world. And I think this episode is like a microcosm of that. It shows him using those skills and utilizing his power to help people in like a really small scale. If he can do it with these two, he can do it with the whole world.
Right.
It
was kind of alluded to that too when he was saying how I'm not sure if I initially when Katara was all like, "Hey, Aang, like, do you want to do something about this?" And he was like, "I'm not sure. Like, this has been something that's going on for 100 years. So has the war." So it's just a little nice, playful foreshadow, just like, Aang, you can't handle this, but you can handle 100-year war.
Yeah.
Like, that's also been going on for 100 years. And Katara's always the one that's like pushing Aang. It's like, you can do this. You're the Avatar. She Katara gets Aang in so much trouble sometimes because it's always like, listen
really
up,
does.
everybody.
She
This
really
is the
does.
Avatar. And Aang's just like, oh, okay. I didn't know we were going to tell the whole world, but all right, yep, I'm the Avatar.
Yeah.
It's
very much like a Katara, stop. I didn't want anyone to know, but she just, yeah.
It's like, Katara's the epitome, like, if she's like the entourage of a celebrity.
Yeah.
Listen up, everybody. Usher's here.
Yeah. Yeah, but Aang and Sokka and Katara managed to get everyone across the canyon, and everyone's happy. The end. What a nice day.
The only thing, all right, so my main gripe with this episode, I didn't have one until I rewatched it.
Okay.
My main gripe is it didn't lead to anything. Like I generally want to know the actual story of Jin Wei and Wei Jin.
Yeah, it never actually gives us closure. Yeah.
Like I get it that Aang told a lie to like solve the conflict, but what actually happened?
In all honesty, I was thinking about that too. I think that it wasn't two people. I think it was one person because Wei Jin, Jin Wei, like those are I think it was one person who was going from one tribe to the other with this orb, whether it was sacred, whether it wasn't, doesn't matter. But something happened along the way where he got stopped and he lost the orb, or he was thrown in jail because of a misunderstanding. I think both of their stories have moments of truth.
Right.
But I think it wasn't two people fighting against each other. I think it was one. I think it was maybe someone from one of the tribes going to the other, and something happened, and it just got conflated and exaggerated throughout the years.
That's a good theory.
Yeah. I mean, I think also the point is that it's not important. I mean, I understand like feeling frustrated because I was a little frustrated too that we never really get closure, but that's life. Sometimes you don't get closure, and sometimes things that you think are important aren't important. It was over 100 years ago. Neither of the tribes had the orb. They've been fighting all this time, and it really was for no reason.
Right.
And so we don't need to know what really happened because they're starting anew. They're starting fresh, I mean, I get what you're saying, definitely.
I guess. Whatever. Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Onto the storm.
Onto the storm. I want to start off this by saying that Momo and Sokka are an underrated friendship duo, and I love them.
You said some pretty harsh things in my dream.
Oh, yeah.
With that.
Yeah, you said some very hurtful things, Momo.
I thought it was cool how how the episode opened up to let the audience know that this is a dream. Appa's like flapping his arms.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that's not how Appa flies.
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
it loses the audience, and if that didn't give it off, then obviously Sokka airbending.
Yeah, a guitar on a giant
A
Momo.
giant Momo would have gave it away.
Yeah.
And I thought it was this is the first time we get a flash of Ozai.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that happens not frequently, but like throughout the series, like Aang would get these random flashes of Ozai, like
Yeah, exactly.
posing intimidatingly.
Yeah. Because this episode, I think, is definitely Aang coming to grips with what his disappearance means and what it meant. I also just love this episode because of the way that it goes back and forth between Zuko and Aang, kind of showing from the very beginning how their paths are side by side, which comes into play much, much later when we learn more about who Zuko is and who Aang is and their histories. But I love that right from the kind of start, this episode is telling us as the audience, hey, these two people, they're meant to be going in the same like direction. They're meant to meet at some point. They're meant to have their paths mimic each other.
Their fates are intertwined.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great because as the audience, you don't know why yet. You just know that like they're supposed to be connected,
Mm-hmm.
And this episode, I think, does a really cool job of like going back and forth between their stories.
And again, Iroh's wisdom be coming through. He just sniffs the air. He's like, "There's a storm coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like we should head southeast." It's like, I don't know. Iroh's just amazing, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a general for so many years. It makes sense that he would understand how, sailing works, especially because the Fire Nation works mainly by Navy and Army. So yeah, I feel a little bad because it must be hard for all the people on that boat to be bossed around by a grumpy teenager.
Yeah.
Like these are grown adult men and women who have years of experience and they're bossed around by some upstart teenager with daddy issues.
It's surprising that a lot of them, or it seems like none of them, knew the origins of this
Yes.
mission.
Oh, I want to talk about that.
That was surprising to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I guess it's like a secret that Ozai burned his son.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
So, okay. So this is kind of going to be talking a little bit about another episode that's further in the future, which is the episode Zuko Alone. So, I mean, obviously this podcast isn't spoiler free, but I have to talk about Zuko Alone to talk about this. So in Zuko Alone, we learn that people in the Earth Kingdom know what happened to Zuko. They know that his father burned his face. But people in the Fire Nation, except for the ones who were there, don't know that. Why is that? That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of the emotions that action gives. So to an Earth Kingdom person, to hear that Ozai burned his son's face for speaking out of turn, that inspires fear and that inspires submission. Well, if Ozai can do that to his own son, well, what can he do to me, an Earth Kingdom peasant? He will destroy me if he's willing to hurt his own son. The Fire Nation is ruthless. The Fire Nation will do whatever it has to do to take power. But in the Fire Nation, that would be bad. They don't want their people to, I think, be afraid of Ozai in the same way. They want them to like adore Ozai and obey him out of loyalty and an almost fanaticism. So that's why the Fire Nation doesn't know what happened to Zuko. All they know is that Zuko was sent away to find the Avatar. And I think that's so clever on Ozai's part.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the only clever things he does. But I think it's so clever that he doesn't, that except for the people who were at the Agni Kai, no one in the Fire Nation knows what happens to Zuko. Because that would be bad. People would be like, he burned his own son? What kind of person is this? He's horrible. He can't be our leader. But instead, we're just seeing that, Ozai sent his son to find the Avatar. Oh man, what knowledge must he have? He must know some things we don't. He's so brave and strong and smart. We have to obey Ozai. He is bringing the Fire Nation in the right direction, So I think it's really, really interesting and very smart on Ozai's part.
Use that critical thinking. Brielle.
Yeah, that people outside of the Fire Nation know what happened to Zuko, but not in the Fire Nation. Yeah. Yeah, no, I also really like to just, so like Zuko and I believe Lieutenant G, that's his name, are like about to fight, and Iroh's like, "Hey, maybe have a bowl of noodles and you'll calm down."
It's just seen when when the general starts going off, right?
Yeah.
You can see Iroh in the background. Like as soon as he mentioned respect, I was just like,
Yeah, he's like, "No, don't do it."
oh man.
Yeah,
No, but that's a really, really good point.
yeah.
That makes that makes a lot of sense
Mhm.
for Ozai not to I guess like discourage the morality
Mhm.
in the Fire Nation.
Yeah.
To like keep that a secret.
Yeah.
Even though we know that he was willing to sacrifice rookies
Mhm.
to the Earth Kingdom
Yeah.
as a pawn just to
Yeah, exactly.
wow man,
Yeah.
that's deep.
Yeah.
That's real deep.
Yeah, Zuko's accident, Zuko's scar inspires very different emotions based on what you know about it. Yeah, so let's talk about Zuko and then we'll talk about Aang.
Mm.
It's so funny because when I first watched the show, I knew what happened to Zuko just because I've been alive these past 10 years and
Right.
you know, I've been on the internet. So I knew that Zuko's father gave him the scar.
Right.
I knew that. I didn't know how, I didn't know why. I just knew that like Zuko's dad did it. So when I was watching it for the first time, like not rewatch for this,
Mm.
when I was watching it for the first time, oh my God, is it shocking? Like as an adult watching, like it's mind blowing. Like how could a parent do that to their son to not only like actively hurt their child, but trick them and make them beg and make them cry and then hurt them in front of all these people? Like it's horrifying. It's disgusting. What was it like watching it as a kid?
Oh, it completely went over my head.
Really?
I didn't watching it as a kid. I just remember I was like, oh wow, that was pretty harsh. But
Oh,
I mean, growing up Haitian, you kind of familiar with that type of stuff. Not necessarily like parents.
what? What do you mean you're familiar with that stuff?
It's just like all right. So with
Okay.
Ozai, he wants Zuko to be strong or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole point. His justification of burning Zuko was because he showed shameful weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up Haitian, it was kind of the same thing. Like, my dad wanted me, or like still wants me, just to be this strong, tough dude, growing up. So, you know, not that there would be like times of like physical violence or nothing like that, but it was just like might like push me the wrong way one time or something like that. So watching it as a child, I was just like, oh, like that's normal. No, this sounds really bad. I promise you, I don't have abusive parents. I promise. It's just that that thought process, that the way he justified it. I was just like, yeah, like you showed that you was weak, so you got punished for it. Like you can't really show that you're weak, and
Interesting.
yeah.
See, I don't think that's true.
I mean, I know it's different now, but
I don't think Ozai was mad because Zuko was showing weakness. I think he was mad because Zuko was speaking out against him. That Zuko wasn't behaving and doing exactly what he wanted.
the perfect prince.
Yeah, I don't think that that's why Ozai did what he did, because his son was being unmanly or anything. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying the cruelty that Ozai shows is far beyond that. And I think, his actions to physically mar his son for life speaks to not a desire to see his son be strong, but a desire to merely hurt his son and to punish him. And that is cruel. It's very interesting because, like, when I was watching it last night for this podcast, I felt myself like getting a little choked up. Like I felt so bad for Zuko because you see that he's at his very core, he's a good kid. He doesn't want to sacrifice unnecessary people. He doesn't want to hurt more people than he should. He's smart. He's clever. And everyone kind of talks down to him and hurts him and betrays him. And, you know, he was willing, as what, like a 13-year-old at that point, he was willing to fight a seasoned general because that's who he thought the Agni Kai was against. And then to turn around and see that it's his own father who, you know, we find out later he's been trying to please and you know, make proud and make his father proud of him the whole time, to see that it's his father. Like, oh my gosh, like that must have really messed him up in his head. And then to have his father not take pity on him, and to have his father show no mercy, and to have his father, you know, so like when I was first watching the show, I like was watching it, blah, blah, blah. And then like after a while, I think sometime in like season 3, when we learn a little bit more about like Zuko's past, I realized that the shape of Zuko's scar is a handprint, which meant that Ozai had to hold his son's face when he burned him. And so for Zuko to be begging his father to show mercy, for Ozai to say, you will learn respect, you will learn dignity, and suffering will be your teacher, and then to hold his son's face, for that split second, Zuko must have been happy. Zuko must have had hope. And then it was all dashed. And like, oh, my heart. Oh, my heart. Like, oh, God. Because like when you first realize that like Ozai burned his son's face, what I pictured in my head was like a fire blast. Like he like shot fire at him. But then you realize that it was like he was holding his son's face. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
You are digging deep.
Like, oh gosh, the trauma of these children. Someone get them a therapist. But it was just like, yeah, I just found it really heartbreaking.
I mean, at the time of first watching it as a child, I just thought like, you know, it was coming from a place of like trying to make him stronger. But as we learn further down the line that Ozai never really loved Zuko at all. And we see that, especially with the, I guess, unofficial introduction to Azula, who we see is just smiling with glee of like, yeah.
At her brother's pain, yeah.
Yeah, because she knows that she's the favorite child. She knows that she is the chosen one, essentially. So just like, yeah, that like finally. Like,
yeah.
Kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
And Ozai was, and we also learned that Ozai was more than willing to kill Zuko.
Oh yeah.
If it wasn't for his mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
Yeah. I also can't help but wonder about Iroh, because the guilt that he must feel, because he's the one who let Zuko into that war meeting. And when Zuko was getting his first face burned, Iroh looked away. And so I can't help but wonder if Iroh going with Zuko is in part to make up for the mistakes that he made. Like, the reason that Zuko's on this boat is because of Iroh. Let's kind of, you know, if we want to just be vague about it.
Right.
So I think one of the many reasons of you know, that Iroh has been on this boat with Zuko, going along with his plans, appeasing him and trying to teach him, is because I think he feels incredibly guilty about his part in Zuko's pain and Zuko's attack. And, you know, I think what's really interesting is that every character in this show really goes on an arc, Iroh included. Like, just because he's an adult doesn't mean that he doesn't have his own character arc. And I think the arc of this show is him kind of accepting and making up for all the atrocities that he's done in his past. You know, even though they're not in very large ways, they're in very small ways. I think his whole arc in this show is him making up for the things that he did in his past, one of which, you know, his actions leading to Zuko's attack and Zuko's scar. But yeah, I just love that, you know, we see Zuko's, I think, compassion and his heart, which the Fire Nation considers a weakness, but we know that it's a strength. And I like that we see it even then when he was younger, that he was like at his very core that he's a good person. Which again, I think sets up those seeds of his redemption later on, that we see that he's a good guy. Not as much of a jerk as he could have been.
And this is a callback to, I believe it was episode 3, when Iroh was like, "Don't you remember the last time what happened when you spoke up against someone in power?"
Yeah.
Like, now we got the answer.
Now we got the answer.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And I think it's really sweet how after Iroh explains what happened to Zuko, his crew respects him more and they realize what he's been going through, and they work to help each other and save the guy at the top of the mast when the storm gets really, really bad.
And I'm pretty sure everyone really had to like had a newfound respect for Zuko, because the fact that he essentially spoke up for them, because like they're serving the Fire Nation, and it's like to hear that the Fire Lord was willing to just send out rookies at the mercy of the Earth Kingdom, just to get a sneak attack.
Yeah.
And the only person who stood up for them, the people, is Zuko.
Yeah.
They had to like love Zuko after that.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, like I didn't know. Like I just thought he was just some punk, spoiled prince.
Exactly. Yeah.
Turns out he's rooting for us, and the fact that he rooted for us caused them all this, caused them all this pain and suffering.
Yeah.
You know, and how the general was like, "Wow, I thought he was burned in a training accident."
Yeah.
It's like that really had to hit home, and it was like, "Well, like no, he was burned because he was sticking up for me."
Yeah.
That's deep, man.
Yeah. And I think I think it really speaks for the camaraderie of this group that's on the boat. I mean, we don't really learn much about the people who are on the boat with Zuko and Iroh, but I think it really speaks to the camaraderie that you get when you are stuck in a place with people for so long. And I think it's nice that they show Zuko the respect that he has, not that he necessarily like deserves just by being Zuko, but the respect that he deserves by doing what he has done, and you know, all the work that he puts in and everything.
And to see Zuko's concern for the helmsman when he was like falling or like dangling,
Yes,
it had to like just reaffirm that thought, like he's sticking up for us.
Yeah.
Because you know, anybody else would probably be like, leave him, like we got to get the ship, like if he falls he falls, whatever.
Yeah.
Like Zuko, the first one to climb the ladder, man.
Yeah. And the fact that he decides to go into the eye of the storm instead of chasing Aang. Like, he cares more about the safety of his crew at that moment than Aang, which, you know, speaks to his maturity and speaks to his, I think, underlying compassion.
And then he does one of the many apologies to Iroh.
Yes.
Like, sorry, uncle. Yeah, you got to say that a few more times.
You know, but yeah, it's good. And then, you know, we learn a lot about Zuko, and I think that everything that we learn about him paints this very interesting, sad picture. But, you know, there's hope is coming for Zuko, you know, and I think that's good. Yeah, now let's talk about Aang's side of the story, Aang's life and his version of things during the storm.
Man, so sad.
Yeah.
Both are just sad.
Yeah.
What Aang is just like he lost his childhood.
Yeah.
Like they dropped this bomb on him, saying that he's the Avatar.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting until he was 16, which they traditionally do.
Yeah, because they realized that war was coming. Sozin was
and it's just like
getting more powerful.
Things probably would have been okay for Aang. It was just the fact that everyone started treating him differently.
Yeah.
It's
I feel so bad.
Yeah, like he showed everyone how to do the air scooter, and then they came up with a game for it, and he can't even play the game.
Yeah.
Because being the Avatar is an advantage.
Yeah, which isn't true.
No.
I mean, technically he already had an advantage in general just because he was such a skilled airbender. Like, he was the only one out of those kids who had the tattoos, which are a symbol of his, like, spiritual superiority. But it is. I think it's kind of showing that, unfortunately, for people of great skill and great power, there's often a level of loneliness that accompanies that. You know, when your job is to be a bridge for all people, you sometimes are by yourself. And that's unfortunately, I think, something that the avatars have to get used to and they have to deal with. The fact that for a lot of their lives, they probably are alone because they're traveling from place to place and they're working with people, but they can't stay,
Right.
you know?
And bless Gyatso's heart, man.
Yeah.
He was really there for Aang.
Yeah.
You know.
He was Aang's father, let's be honest.
Yep, but basically, his father, his friend, his best friend,
Yeah.
is like, he can tell that Aang is down as they're playing Pai Sho.
Yeah.
And, they jokingly he spins the air.
Yeah.
And it gets Aang to brighten up. It's like, hey.
Yeah.
And then this little funny Duddy had to come in and ruin the moment.
Yeah.
But as Gyatso turns the other monk away, when Aang turns around, he has a smile on his face. He's
Yeah.
like, thank you, Gyatso.
Yeah. I mean, I understand like why the airbenders were like, oh, we have to tell Aang like war is coming, but I do feel bad that he wasn't allowed to be a child,
Yeah.
the way the other avatars were. One of the things that I think is cool is and I feel like most people know this isn't like a new fun fact, but when they reveal the way that they knew that Aang was the avatar by the toys that he picked out as a child, that's the way that they pick the Dalai Lama. So that's, I think, kind of cool. Yeah, the way that they pick the next Dalai Lama is they have like a bunch of toys, and whatever toys that he picks, those say that he's the Dalai Lama because they believe in reincarnation and everything. So that's kind of cool
I didn't
that
know
they
that.
took that from, real Asian culture and, used it. I think that's cool. And, I understand why Aang did what he did, why he ran away. Like, he was just 12 and a war was starting and he was told that suddenly he has to fight this war that he kind of wasn't involved in, and
Right.
all of his friends were treating him differently and he would have to be sent away from Gyatso, and like, I get it. I understand why he ran. That's a very 12-year-old thing to do. That's a very childlike thing to do. And, it just happened that he ran right into a storm and he ended up frozen. If the storm hadn't happened, he would have, who knows where he would have run, but they would have found him, and then, he would have just continued on with his life. And so as sad as it is that he ran away, I think it was important that he ran away because then he got frozen and he ended up where he is. Because Katara is right. Like, if he had stayed or if he had been found, he would have been killed. He wasn't nearly strong enough to, defend himself against the Fire Nation. And I know last episode, we talked about like what would have happened if Aang hadn't frozen into the ice. And I was like, well, maybe the airbenders would have survived a little bit, but ultimately, even if they survived at first, they would have been wiped out by the Fire Nation, I'm sure, at some point. So,
And Aang probably would have been killed unintentionally in the Avatar state,
yeah.
because since he wasn't a full-fledged Avatar, and I'm assuming that Sozin attacked during the time of like when I guess he would be still mastering water.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say that he traveled. When Sozin attacked, Aang would have gone into the Avatar state,
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally, like without
Yeah, because he felt threatened, yeah.
without any training, and he would have killed, and that would have ended the Avatar cycle.
So it as sad as it is, it's probably for the best that he ended up running straight into a storm and getting frozen. But it must like, I feel so bad for Aang in these episodes because the guilt that he must feel, that isn't really his fault.
No.
Like, he didn't intend to get frozen in ice, and he never planned on it. And, he probably, when he was flying away, thought, oh, I'll run away to here and Gyatso will find me and then everything will be fine. And, I'll become the Avatar, but it'll be fine. So just the guilt and the anguish that he must feel, that's so unnecessary, I think is so sad. Like, but I feel like at the end of this, the important thing that Aang learns and that we as the audience learn is that Aang is a metaphor for hope. Aang brings hope. Aang is hope. He's hope for the people that he helps, and he's hope for Zuko.
Yeah.
And while he may not have been able to help his people then, he's able to help everyone now. And so I think his his acceptance of the mistakes that he made and his ability to move on is really important and very mature and very, I think, emotionally mature of him to realize that he made mistakes, but he's not this bad guy that old man said he was.
Right.
He's just a kid, but he's going to do right this time.
An awful old man.
Yeah, he was
fact-
mean.
He is really mean. And the fact that he was going to like pay his wife less or whatever. Like when
Yeah.
he said like, I'm going to pay whoever double than what I pay you. Like that's your wife, dude.
I mean, considering that he gave Sokka a fish, like that's how they pay. I think he was just being angry, and I don't think he actually like pays his wife. I think he was just talking. But yes.
It's awful.
However, I want a sitcom of Sokka and that old man. They are hilarious together. I want a sitcom.
I mean, it could work. It could work. I could see it.
Yeah.
The storm scene is powerful.
Yeah.
How just one funny bit when Sokka's like, "Oh, I'm too young to die."
Yeah.
The guys are like, "I ain't, but I still don't wanna."
Yeah.
That was hilarious. But
Yeah.
how Appa swoops in and like obviously he can't land anywhere. They tied him up. It's like, hang on. They like I guess catapult them onto Appa.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, oh yeah, like everything's great. Now they're gonna like, nah, the wave comes, boom, everyone's drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And is obviously I guess for Aang it was like a flashback of like
Yeah.
what happened. It was like, nah, this time there's no freezing the ice, nothing like
Yeah.
goes into Avatar state, creates air for everyone to breathe, flies up.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the opposite side, we got Zuko. They go into the eye of the storm, eye of the storm, and we see the unofficial confirmation that lightning can be bended.
Yeah. It's so cool to watch Iroh do that.
They just like passed over it.
Yeah.
It was like if you pay attention, like that was cool, but like it could just go right over your head that he
Yeah.
just deflected the lightning.
Yeah.
He did it so naturally too. He's just like, and honestly, they do it a little bit comedic.
Yeah, by making his hair
His
stand
hair is
up.
all freeze.
But yeah, that it's a subtle reminder of how powerful Iroh is.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And then Aang and the group come out the water, and him and Zuko got that little stare down.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, and I think that's the acknowledgement of Aang as hope for Zuko, that he will someday be able to return to the Fire Nation and restore his honor. But yeah, this episode I think is so important for Aang because it's an episode of him realizing his past mistakes and vowing not to make them. Because when we see Aang in the past, he always seems to be running away. He always seems to be running from his problems. And this whole show is him facing his problems. Whether it's working with that spirit, hey bye, and like, actively going to help him, or, standing up against the Fire Nation. Aang, before all this, before the iceberg, might have run. He might have run away because he had the comfort of the air nomads behind him, because he was like, I'm just a kid. I don't want to get involved in this war. But now I think he realizes that it's not enough to kind of stay out of things. You have to get involved and you can't run away. And this whole show is him stepping up to the plate and being the avatar that Katara knows he can be, and helping people when he didn't before, which, to be fair, he was a kid. But like, I think this episode is such an important turning point for Aang because it's him letting go of his guilt and his, sadness, not entirely, but letting go of his guilt and his sadness and stepping up into his role of avatar.
Yeah.
This is a really important episode for him, I think.
It's just an important episode overall.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's a good episode.
Very good. And when this episode ended, watching this on Netflix, and then it went straight into the Blue Spirit, I was like, oh, this is the next one.
I know. I was.
I want to talk about this one.
Yeah. Next
one. Next one.
But yeah, this episode, I think, is a really good one. And it's a really good one to kind of end on.
Yes.
Like, they go off into the calm eye of the storm,
Yeah.
And now let's have some noodles and calm down.
And then gets an apology from the old man.
Yeah,
Again,
which is nice.
like, if you weren't here, then I wouldn't be here. Thank you, Avatar.
Yeah. And here's a fish.
Here's a fish for your troubles.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that's
Yeah, I think we're done with this podcast. Thank you all for watching and listening. As always, it will be on Anchor, it will be on Spotify, it will be on, there are a few places that you can listen to it. If you go to our Anchor page, there's like a link and it shows you where you can listen, so you can choose which one works best for you. We will also be on YouTube. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. We want some feedback. And we will see you next time, right?
Yep. All right then. Later.
Bye.